Kong. I've been working out since I was in fifth grade. I just randomly started one day because some of my friends in elementary school were working out. Haven't stopped then. Besides, there was a 2 year gap when I was a freshman in high school to junior in high school, and for 2 years I completely quit exercising and I played World of Warcraft for 2 years straight. So in the span of 4 years, I had over 400 days in the video game alone in 4 years. So, and then after that, I started working out again junior year. But I think I had like, as far as like, genetics go, I'm pretty lucky. So like when I was young, my nickname was Double D's because I had like pretty big boobs as a seventh grader. And I was like benching 205 when I was in eighth grade going into high school. Then in college, this is where I met you, obviously, my sophomore year, your freshman year. And then we were like, well, we got to recruit this guy to be part of the bro squad at the gym. But yeah, just been lifting a long ass time. And then, kind of here to talk about just different lifestyles. As someone that's not really like, I'm into fitness, but I'm not into the fitness culture and the business of fitness and, the shows and like maxing out everything. So, I think it's like maybe a little different of a conversation we'll have.
Yeah, no, actually, I think it's more interesting because like what you mentioned that you're not into like maxing out your body and like going to the extremes, but actually you kind of have done those things before, just in like completely different ways. So it wasn't about like getting as lean or as strong as possible. It was more in like ways that other people might not be as familiar with, and just like doing the weird experiments with yourself to try and push your body in different ways, but also obviously like you have a life that has nothing to do with fitness. Like your normal job, your normal career is not fitness related. That's, more so
Right.
you're by trade a nerd, right? So like,
Yeah.
that's the thing. And like for anybody who's not watching this, Aaron is the most jacked random Asian that you'll ever see. But the first time I ever saw you, I walked into Jesse Owens South at OSU, and I just saw this super jacked, veiny, ripped Asian, just like incline benching 315 or something like that. It was something ridiculous like that.
I don't think I've ever incline bench 315. I did 295 for six on incline, but like I don't even bench 225 anymore.
Yeah, it was
like half the size of what I used to be.
It was like something ridiculous like that. And then we trained together, and then you just like started mooching all of my swipes for like the next 2 semesters or something like that. I had to pay for all of Aaron's food for like the next 3 years.
Oh my god, swipes. I remember those days. I was always like trying to find like a girlfriend to date that had swipes.
No, but like I think in general it is going to be a good conversation because like 99% of people who are into fitness like, enjoy training, enjoy that aspect of like bettering themselves. Like it's not their job, it's not their profession. They want to do it more so casually, but they also like the aspect of self-improvement. So there has to be that interesting balance. And I think a lot of people struggle with finding that balance because everything is so catered towards the extremes. It's catered towards like you have to make this your life and you have to dedicate all of these resources, this time, this money towards what you're doing, that it should be a hobby. Or people just really, really struggle with even making it a hobby. Like they can't find that habit. They go in, they go out, and in general, it's like very much a struggle for them to do anything productive with it. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. But before we even talk about fitness, I want to talk about your international travels. So
maybe I can screen share. I have a spreadsheet going.
you have a spreadsheet going of all the places that you travel to?
Yes, it's not complete, but it is complete for the past like 3 years.
So after OSU, what was like that cadence of you traveling? Because I remember for a while, I was like, I could look on your Instagram and be like, okay, Aaron's in a new country this week. Like it felt like that. It felt like you were literally globe hopping. So do you want to just kind of maybe high level walk through like what you did, why you were doing that, like how you were traveling the world, and for how long you did it?
Yeah, so after graduating, I basically did a year in Columbus, kind of working corporate, whether it's like, the credit industry or just logistics of, like just crap, unfortunate corporate jobs. I was like, I need to get out of here. This is when I was like still like 21, 22. So it was like right time to do this. And I was like, all right, what's the easiest way to get abroad where you can get a visa and you can work abroad without having these difficulties and have like relatively decent income? And this is the cliche and like most common choices to teach English. The pay is significantly higher than anyone in those countries, assuming you're in like a third world country, whether it's like Vietnam or China. Even Japan is like relatively high paying, or even Madrid or Spain. So I was like, all right, let me go. I go to Vietnam. I was gonna do China, and then literally like right before I'm about to fly to China, I was like, maybe I'll just stay in Vietnam and skip this flight. So I just stayed in Vietnam and started working there. And the pay there is like, five or how long ago was this? Like 2015, so 8 years ago. Back then, the like entry salary was 17 an hour, and the average minimum wage in Vietnam is around $140 a month in the big city. So you can imagine like you're just making 10x the average salary of someone there. Like even someone graduating from college from a university in Vietnam is going to be making 1/4 of what you're making. So you're living a really good lifestyle. And again, this is like very easy. There's no barrier to entry. If you speak English and you're not an idiot, you're good to go. And then I just basically did 3 countries like that. So I did Spain after Vietnam, and then I did Japan after Spain. And then in Japan, I was like, when I was like, all right, I should probably make more money, probably do something a little more serious, and I just shifted into crypto, which has its ups and downs, but currently has its ups, so that's good.
Well, I mean, we could talk about that at the end because I think that's an interesting point for both of us to talk about. But like you did teaching. How were you able to bounce around? Like, did you find that there were troubles with you integrating into these different, like completely different cultures for one? Because going from like Eastern Asian culture to Spain, like that's a massive switch up. Did you have trouble like moving between some of these countries? Like, I feel like I would have a lot of trouble doing that, but like, was that relatively easy for you? And also just maybe, do you want to say that like you do speak Chinese natively? Like,
Yeah. So I've been to like China like 10 to 15 times. So it's not like uncommon for me to go somewhere and it's just random ass place. And I'm like, all right, like, this is random and different, but it's no more different than another country would be. So like moving to Vietnam has plenty of difficulties, but it's not that difficult because there are plenty of expats, expatriates, where basically expatriates, I don't even know how to pronounce that, but basically like all these foreigners living there, there's like a community, and they don't help you, but the knowledge and information is there if you just Google it, or you go on Facebook and you seek help. Getting an apartment's not super difficult. If you have some money, it's pretty easy. Rent's pretty cheap there, 300 to 500 a month for like a really nice brand new unit. Visas are pretty annoying to get sometimes, but generally the staff at these like private schools will like walk you through everything. So foreigners are more or less handheld through the process. If they're just somewhat competent, you probably pretty much be fine. But as far as like culture goes, for me, it's like not as difficult because I'm Chinese and I speak Chinese, and I've been to foreign countries. So traveling to a country and like moving there is not the most difficult thing because I'm just like used to things being annoying. So if your normal is annoying, then like it doesn't really bother you, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, like coming from me, I think that would be probably really, really difficult because I've only lived in the US. Like I've only spent an extended period of time in the US. I've never done so abroad. So just thinking about like trying to integrate myself into an international culture with people around me that don't speak English natively, or like maybe I'm hearing a bunch of words, a bunch of like languages that I don't know. I don't understand.
Yeah, people are just yapping and like
Yeah,
it sounds like
yeah.
chickens squawking. You're just like, what is that noise?
I know. I'm like looking at signs. I can't read anything. I feel like I would just be overwhelmed immediately. But like you obviously have at least some of that experience. So like, how different is, I guess, like the language barrier between like Chinese versus Vietnamese? Like for you, was that like I can mostly pick up on those things, or did you actually have to like somewhat learn Vietnamese almost from ground root?
I know zero Vietnamese. I knew my address, which is 367 Pham Nhu Lao, which is like the most busy street in one of the most busy streets in all of Vietnam. But most people, they know what a tourist is. They know what tourists want. Like you just kind of gesture and you imply things. Like if you're hungry, you just spoon your feed yourself. If you need a toilet, you just, I don't know, point at your crotch or something. But at the same time, as an English teacher, you're usually teaching a language that you don't speak. So you need to be able to convey a message without speaking that language. So whether it's Japanese or Chinese people, or Vietnamese people or Spanish people, I didn't speak the language. So how do I convey a message? Or if it's like colors or numbers, you kind of just know how to gesture and how to explain something without speaking the language. So that does help a little bit, but at the same time, it's like tourists, you just do tourist things and use a translator app, or you flash some money and you explain like you're trying to buy something. You point at, if you want triple meat, you just point at meat and you I'll say 3, right? Which doesn't always work. Like it's actually like sometimes they just have no idea what you're saying and then they just nod their head because people don't want to act like people don't want to come off like they don't know, right? So most people just nod their head and pretend. But yeah, it's like it's tedious, it's annoying, but it's not like you're not gonna be screwed entirely.
No, yeah. And you did make a good point there that I guess I hadn't even really thought of too much, was that you're teaching a language you're teaching a language to people who speak a language natively that you don't even understand. So like, it's very different than a bilingual class in the US where someone is a Spanish speaker and they go to an English speaking school. There's typically a bilingual teacher that will teach them English and Spanish, or they will have that crossover. So like, they're able to explain in a native language what this concept means in the foreign language, right? So like with you're saying you actually were not able to do that, right? So if you're
and that's like the preferred method as
yeah,
well. People like if they knew I spoke Chinese, they would tend to be like, no, we don't want someone that speaks Chinese, because sometimes people just default to the language to explain something and just like take the easy way out. But like the full immersion is the goal generally.
That's actually really interesting thinking about it like that, and also having to be more abstract rather than like definitive in how you're saying something, because it's very easy to say like this is a dog, but if you actually like reinforce that through like some kind of abstract concept, I feel like that's going to like stick much better than if you just say dog, like
right.
So maybe that's actually really interesting potential way of like teaching or just thinking about that. So no, man, I just branching off of that, going back to your travels, like what was the best place that you lived and taught, and what was the worst, your least favorite?
Yeah, so the best place, I say this all the time, is Japan. Tokyo is the best city in the world. Japan is the best country in the world, and I think like pretty highly of the USA. I don't think it's like God's gift to the world, but I would put USA like as a tier 1 country to live in. There are plenty of benefits, and I've lived in probably like 6 countries collectively, I suppose. So I think my opinion does have some merit. But Japan, Tokyo is just the best because it's so clean, it's so efficient. So it's also one of the most crowded cities in the world, and the space is very little and everything's compact. But it's also the biggest city in the world. There are like 40 million people in the city. And I guess you put it in perspective, what's like New York have like 7 million or something.
I think New York is maybe more like 10, but maybe
it might be like 11 actually, but it's not 40, right? Imagine how busy New York City is, and then you think of Tokyo. That's like, to put it in perspective. But it's also like Japanese people have in their culture a way of operating. So if you imagine the ocean and you imagine a school of fish, you've never seen a traffic jam in the ocean because these animals, they just know how to intermingle with each other. So they're not like running into each other. They're not on different sides of the sidewalk. So in Japan, everyone is on the right side of the escalator. They're always on the correct side of the sidewalk. They're always waiting in line. There are lines everywhere. There are cute little things on the floor where if you're getting on the train, there's like a little diagonal line that tells you where to stand. If you're in the USA, there are no lines generally. San Francisco train system, holy crap! Like, don't go there. Like, look over your shoulder. I was in California for a few months over the past maybe like 7-8 months, and the train system just sketches me out there. It's like I'm looking around and just someone's always looking like they're about to hurt me. But in Japan, it's just like so clean and organized, and everything is just on point. The checkout systems, everything's tap to pay. The train systems are perfect. Every little train is going straight to the center of a hub. And there are also trains that go all the way out to the random little neighborhoods. Like, let's say you're in Columbus and and you have downtown Columbus, and a train goes to Short North, you're also going to have a train that goes out to like Powell and Grove City. And, you wouldn't think that there's the infrastructure for this, but there is. And it makes everything so convenient. You don't need a car in Japan. You can travel anywhere by bullet train, and you can go from the north to all the way to the south in like, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 hours with just a bullet train. So you don't have to show up 3 hours before your flight because it's a train. And then you just get on and zip, 250 miles, I don't know, maybe like 150 miles, like just all the way down, no traffic jams. You can balance a quarter on its edge on the train because it's so smooth. If the trains are delayed, they issue a national apology for like a 3 minute delay because they're so efficient with their timing and they just don't mess around. Even when there are snowstorms and the railroads are just destroyed, they still make the effort to actually get the train to its destination. So like I was stuck in a snowstorm, one of the worst snowstorms in recent history up in like northern Japan. I might have made up the one of the worst, but like I'm pretty sure it was really bad. It was like notably really bad
Yeah.
that past winter there. And they're like issuing national, like, oh, like there are gonna be all kinds of delays from this region up like Hokkaido area. And they were still getting the trains across, warning people would be a delay probably, but they were still making the effort. In the USA, it would just shut down, right? So this is something I really wish the states had just to like increase efficiency throughout like travel and commuting. But yeah, so like Japan is one of my favorites because everything's so efficient, everything's so clean. You look and see like outside of little shops where there's foot traffic, people are walking on sidewalks through these shops and like these alleyways. They are literally lint rolling the carpet in front of the shop to keep it clean, even though someone's gonna walk on it in 2 seconds. So like that's how clean the Japanese people keep their working space. But
What do you think the difference is there between Japanese culture and American culture that allows for a efficient and structured society to operate like that at such a mass scale? Like you said, the city of Tokyo is an order of magnitude basically larger than New York, or even like Chicago, like a large U.S. city. But it seems like large U.S. cities suffer from a lot of issues that maybe Tokyo or like some of these other homogenized cities, I don't know if that's the best way to put it, that they don't suffer from some of those issues. Like you said, there's more of that like focus on cleanliness, focus on efficiency, focus on structure, focus on getting all of these things aligned in a way that makes the citizens' lives easier and protects the citizens in a lot of different ways, right? So what do you think is that difference, if there is only one?
So I don't know if I have the answer that would be accurate, but I have a lot of assumptions. So for example, in Japan, guns are pretty hard to get, but people do have guns and they are legal. But there are very strict rules around them. But these rules are not the same types of rules as you'll have in like the USA. So in Japan, I believe in 2017 or 2018, there was one gun death in all of Japan. And this gun death was accidental, self-inflicted. So it's like really just I think it's just cultural.
Yeah.
So you can create laws and have all these implementations, but at the end of the day, it's the people that follow these laws, and it's the people that are going to be are going to be the reasons things happen. So I think that one of the benefits, and sometimes this is not a benefit in Japan, is that everyone is Japanese. And what this means is like they're not really friendly on immigration. They don't really welcome refugees at all, and they aren't a fan of foreigners too often either. So people in Japan really dislike when others break their norms. So you're not supposed to talk on trains loudly or ever be on a phone, like a phone call in Japan,
Yeah.
in a train station, or no, on a train. Train stations are fine. So like, you'll see a foreigner, just lounging around, just talking on a phone, and people just like, damn it, freaking foreigners. Or you'll see foreigners on trains. They sit in the sections they're not supposed to. So there are like elderly people sections, right? Or the handicapped. And there are sections for women only. And those sections, should be respected. And like, there's a reason they have this. And a lot of foreigners, they just see that and they're like, oh, like they don't think it's a different section. So they just stand over there. And no one in Japan will say anything generally, but it is something that, the Japanese people collectively dislike. But again, it's like mob mentality in a good way because everyone hates when people ruin their space. It's like everyone keeps the house clean and then guests come and like make it messy. So basically, all the Japanese people like the order in their country. They like things being clean. They like people being respectful. And I don't necessarily think it's because they're good and like the best people in the world. It's because they just love having their order in their country, and that's how I think they keep things running so smooth and clean.
Yeah, like I mean, I've obviously never been to Japan, so it's kind of hard for me to speak on this. But just from what I know of Japan, like what I've seen, um, I know that their culture still is very uniform. Like they still really respect a lot of traditional values, a lot of those uh like societal norms, respect, and things I feel like that have more so kind of lagged in a lot of other international cultures. Like the US is a big example of that because we're very heterogeneous and like there are a lot of different cultures. We're very much like a melting pot of like international cultures in the US. And it's not that that's a bad thing. It's just that whenever things like that happen, you can't get this more like uniform standardization of respect across everybody and across respecting other people's property, respecting the country, respecting the land that you're on, because a lot of people just don't have that. Like it hasn't been built over millennia like the Japanese culture has, right? Like for every family that you look to in Japan now, they can say, oh yeah, like my grandfather's 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 grandfather grew up down the road, right? Like, so there is that innate respect for where they are and like the country that they live in. And I feel like even for me, like I'm a fucking white male and I'm European, but I mean, my family's been here forever, at least for the most part. But I definitely don't feel that like oneness or connectedness with like the US that like a Japanese citizen would feel with Japan. So, I do think in my mind, there is that aspect of like a homogenous country, a homogenous culture that tends to kind of like reinforce a lot of those traditional values. But again, not necessarily saying that like having a blend is a bad thing, but I think that there are trade-offs. And one of the trade-offs that we experience is
Yep.
people don't have the same respect for property, other people, things like that they would in Japan. But
Yep.
no, I think that that's a really interesting thing about living abroad that I definitely would not have necessarily noticed. But even something in talking about like speaking loudly on trains or speaking loudly in public places, not to go there, but like even like Chinese people.
Oh no, Chinese people are actually the worst. Like I should just say it's like Chinese tourists and Chinese people probably have the worst manners of any nationality out there, especially because there are so many Chinese travelers. Because the Chinese people actually have money to like go and like travel all the time. Uh, and I have this story that I tell all the time to kind of like embody the Chinese auntie like vibe. So I was in Taiwan in 2014 probably, and I'm getting on a train, waiting for the train to come and stop, and I'm about to get on. And this train is completely empty. There's no one on this train in Taiwan. And we're going to this beautiful gorge called Taroko Gorge, and it's in the mountains, and there's like blue water flowing through it. And and on this train, there's one girl, this teenage girl. She's coming and getting off the train. Now, next to me, waiting to get on the train, is my brother, my friend, and three Chinese aunties. So like a Chinese auntie is like a term. It's like just like a 40, 50-year-old Chinese lady. And and there are three of these ladies, and this girl is getting off the train, and they bum rush her. They push her back into the train to get a seat. Again, this train is completely empty. There's no one around. There's no one outside the train besides my brother, my friend, and I. And these ladies just push this girl in, and then she's just like, "What the hell?" And my brother's like, "Yeah, this is why Taiwanese people tend to just hate Chinese travelers because they're so rude, and they don't even realize they're doing it because they're so used to fighting for these spots." So if you go to China and you get in a line and you try and buy a ticket, there's going to be this revolving circle to get to the front of the line. So literally there's a line and then it goes like in a circle. Everyone in the back line tries to scoot towards the front, and it's just this stupid circle that just like everyone trying to cut each other. So like when I'm in China, I'm like generally bigger than most people. I just if someone tries to cut me, I just like step on their foot on accident, and I just like walk over them. It's kind of funny, but that's Chinese tourists for you. And like in China, if you're out at dinner and you want to spit, you just spit on the floor in the restaurant. Even if it's a really nice 5-star restaurant with carpets, you spit on the carpet. And then if you have a cigarette, guess what you do with the cigarette? You put it out on the carpet.
Really?
Yeah, it's just kind of, it's kind of silly. And
but that's just like that's just normal.
That's just normal in China. But in Japan, you can't even smoke cigarettes outside of designated smoking sections. So you have to go into booths in Japan and smoke in a booth. Or there's like a box where everyone's crowded in, like chickens, and they're just smoking in this little box. And that's the same thing in Korea too. So it's just like very different culture. Basically, like the Japanese people think like, hey, if you're smoking this affects other people. It's annoying. It smells. So you have to go and smoke in like time out section pretty much, instead of inconveniencing other people. So you can't just like walk and smoke on the sidewalk as you're walking. I mean, people do it, but it's not very common. It's just like the people that don't care about the rules, which they exist as well.
No. So now that we talked about Japan being obviously your favorite place, what about the worst? Your least favorite place?
The worst is easily Vietnam because it's just, I think the food kind of sucks, and like, oh my God, I'm gonna get canceled for that. Like everyone's like, I love Vietnamese food. I'm like, well, you haven't lived in Vietnam and eaten there for a year. So there is really good food there, of course. Their basic traditionals are really good. Their pho, which I purposefully pronounce that way because I live there. I think it's hilarious when people are like, it's not pronounced pho. I'm like, yes, I know, but that's why it's funny. Any of your Vietnamese friends listening to this are gonna shoot me, but the quality of the food is extremely low, and the integrity of the food and like the people generally making the food, like they just aren't worried about it being contaminated or old. They just want to sell it and serve it. There was a study that came out in 2015 or 2016 where it was found that 80% of all the noodles served in Japan or in Vietnam were found to be like not healthy to serve. Like actually, like the noodles, the materials inside were not properly made.
Really?
And people were like, "Damn it! Yep, that's Vietnam." Like my friend, my old roommate, this guy just let me stay with him because he was very wealthy. He was the vice president's grandson, and he was just talking about all these problems in his country, and like he knew he's someone that's like ultra wealthy in Vietnam. And he's like, yeah, like everything you're seeing is like kind of accurate. All these observations you're making, it's just really unfortunate. He's like, damn it, like I wish my country did better, but it doesn't. So like they recognize it there. Yeah. There's just so much corruption in Vietnam. And then the pollution is so bad where I would drive my little scooter every day to work. And if you don't wear a mask, your nostrils, the hairs will be filled with black soot after driving like an hour. So if you just pick your nose, it's just black in there because of all the smog from the motorcycles and the buses. And the worst is like if you're driving behind a bus and then it hits the gas, black freaking fog just comes out and just covers you. It's just gross. And then your clothes smell like toxic fumes, and then you just smell like crap. And then I just got sick every 3 weeks or so. I just get food poisoning and get sick. I got food poisoning so much in Vietnam that I'm used to food poisoning at this point. It's weird. Like I'm just like, oh, here's food poisoning. So that's one of the reasons I really dislike living there. Like if the food and the quality and the transportation and like, the air was all good, then that'd be another story. But that's a huge part of it, of course. And I also got like chased by motorcycles and broke my foot one time. And I mean, I don't even know. Have I ever told you the story of my first rim job? Is that safe to talk about this podcast?
Go ahead, let's go.
All right, my first rim job. So I'm flying back from Thailand. Oh, so before Thailand, I'm driving my scooter going to work in Vietnam, and I'm at this gigantic intersection. Like these intersections are huge with like 100 people at each corner, and we have a red light. So I'm hitting the, oh wait, no, we have a green light. So I'm going full speed. And then I realize my green light is behind a red light. So I'm looking at the wrong light. So I see the red light in front of me. So I slam on the brakes and I hit the only puddle on this dry day. And I crash the scooter. Scooter crushes my foot, break my foot. So I'm like crawling to the edge of the sidewalk, like freaking, in a lot of pain, whatever. It heals over like 3 weeks where I can, I go to the hospital, they tell me it's broken. I'm like, all right, fuck. I'm like waddling on crutches every day. After 3 or 4 weeks, I can like walk, but it's still really painful. So it's like it was just the first metatarsal, whatever, the big bone, the big, I can show you this one. Free foot pics for anyone. So the big toe broke, and I was just like waddling on my heels after that point. And I went to Singapore and then went to Thailand, and I was able to walk just fine, but I couldn't run or anything because the additional pressure would be, painful. So I get back from Thailand, and as I'm trying to get a taxi at the airport in Vietnam to go home, there is a line for the taxis. Now, everyone in Vietnam knows you don't take any taxi that's not an official taxi. You always take the real taxis with like the sign up top, and like everyone knows what they're like green taxis. There are green and red taxis in Ho Chi Minh City. Ho Chi Minh City is the New York of Vietnam. So there are like two big cities, Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh. Hanoi sucks. People are gonna hate me for saying that, but I hate it there. I'm never gonna go back. Ideally, I just don't go back to Vietnam, but I have friends there, so I probably will eventually. One of my best friends in Vietnam is actually like I think he's top 2 most famous foreigners in Vietnam. He does like all these shows and like vlogging or whatever. So anyways, back to the story. So I'm looking at the line, and it's really long. I'm like, fuck. And then there's this like shady guy comes up and he's like, oh, like you want to ride? And like he's like kind of beckoning me over. I'm like, no, fuck off. So I'm like walking to the back of the line, and at this time it was like 8 years ago. I'm like, into douchey stuff. I shouldn't say that. I'm into stuff that I would not be into today. So I'm like into like luxury goods and like, pretending like I have all this money. So I had like this fake designer backpack on, this fake designer suitcase or duffel bag, and then I have this fake designer wallet with like all my money in it. And then I even had like 5 iPhones on me because in Vietnam, if you get a brand new iPhone the first day of release, for like the next 2 or 3 weeks, the value of those iPhones is double in Vietnam because there is no Apple store in Vietnam. So all the rich people, and there are plenty of rich people, they will pay double the price for an iPhone. So I'm like, okay, let me go like, arbitrage this, and let me go do like geographic arbitrage with these iPhones. So I have all this, and this is like, to me back then is like quite a bit of money to me, and so I have all these iPhones on me, and I look like a target. I look like I had money, which, I'm like just very average. So I tell the guy to F off. I get in the back of the line. It's so long. I look back at the line. I'm like, fuck it. So I go back to the guy. I'm like, all right, let's go. So we go. And as we exit the airport, we have to pay a little fee to get out of the gates. And he wants me to pay it. This is fair. So I open my wallet, and he digs his freaking hands into my wallet and takes out a fat chunk of money. Because in Vietnam, the money is like really like lower value. So basically, a $20 bill is their biggest bill. So I'm like, I have like 100 of these bills just sitting there. Maybe not 100. I don't know how many, but a fat stack. So he takes the whole stack. He pays the guy and gives me the stack back. Now the stack was notably smaller when I got it back. I was like, all right, I'm not an idiot. I know what just happened. Where the fuck's my money? So I start counting it, and I find out how much is missing. It's around $400. And in Vietnamese money, that's like maybe like 20 or 30 bills missing. But I can't find where the money disappeared to. So like I'm like checking his body, looking under his butt. Like we stopped the car. I look under his chair. I'm looking in his pockets, and the funny thing is, like, I found a $100 bill in his pocket, and I'm like, wait, why would this guy who's probably making $150 a month max have a $100 bill in the U.S. currency? He clearly got someone else before me.
Yeah.
So I still can't find my money. And we're like driving to my apartment still. And I'm like cracking my knuckles because it's cold, but like he thinks I'm about to whoop his ass, which I really wanted to, but again, like this is still anyway, we'll get to that. So we're driving to my place, and my place is right next to the most famous market in all of Vietnam. It's called the Ben Thong Market. It's a perfect square in the middle of Ho Chi Minh City. And from the square it branches off all these roads and all these buildings that like spread out. So maybe I could just even like share my screen and like Google Maps and market. Okay. No, that took me to Arlington, Texas. Come on. Anyways, whatever, I give up. So so we park, and he's like, we're still arguing. And eventually he like is screaming in Vietnamese, right? And everyone around there, it's at night. There are all these night market people out, like people like, flower shop workers or food workers. And, they're not like the wealthiest people, and they're seeing us argue, and they're just watching us and like surrounding us. And the taxi driver shows me where the money is, and it was under my seat the whole time. Now, psychologically, I didn't think to look under my own chair, right? So he basically like debated me, and like he was smart enough to like hide there, but I was still persistent enough to like get him to show me. And at this point, I was like just seeing red. I was so upset. Like I just started like wrestling this guy and choking him out in the middle of the street like an idiot. So as I'm choking him out, whatever, like eventually I just stopped. And I never like, I don't think I ever punched him. I just like choked him, and everyone's like watching. So I have my backpack, my duffel bag, all these phones on me, all my cash, all my wallets, and again, my foot was just healed, right? So all these guys are surrounding me now. I'm trying to tell this hotel guy to call the cops, and he won't. And I'm surrounded, and I have all my belongings on me. So I'm like walking through the crowd, and everyone's just shouting in my ears because obviously I just like choked this guy out. And as I'm, walking through the crowd, I realize I'm in probably a predicament, and I should probably run. So as I get to the edge of the crowd, I start sprinting up the hill. And I'm like running for my life, and I haven't done cardio in like 10 years. I haven't done cardio since middle grade track. And I'm running up the hill, and I take a left. And at the left, there's this normal taxi driver, a good guy, and he sees me running away from all these people chasing me. And, oh, these people are chasing me on motorcycles at this point. So like I'm hearing them revving up, like chasing me. They're like getting on their bikes to chase me. And this taxi driver that is a good guy, he thinks I'm a bad guy. So now he's playing good guy, trying to stop me. And like we do this dance, and we spin in a circle, like those movie scenes where you're spinning in a circle. And I throw him off me in like a perfect loop, and I keep running without losing any speed. And then as I reach the end of this block, my foot snaps. That toe that was broken snaps. So now I'm running on a broken foot, and it's the most painful thing. Well, not the most painful thing I've ever been through, because I almost died a few months ago in California. I have a scar now from that. But anyways, so I'm getting to the end of this corner, and like my foot is just screaming. I can't breathe because I'm so out of shape, and I'm carrying again like 50 pounds of luggage on me, and I'm at risk of losing everything I have. And everyone catches up to me at this point. So I see this really nice hotel. It's called the White Lotus or White Flower Hotel. And it's about 2 blocks away, maybe 3 blocks away. And I'm at the corner right near it. And I got 8 people surrounding me on motorcycles, just screaming in my ear. And I'm like, shit, like, how do I get out of this situation? So I dig into my wallet, and I throw up like $80 in the air, making it rain. And
that's actually
like it was like smaller dog. Yeah. And they all scatter. They just scatter and start picking it up, and I'm like crawling up the steps to this hotel, and I get in, and I explain the situation. They're like, "Oh, we'll protect you. We'll protect you." And I gave them a 5-star review, I'm sure. And I give them all my money, all my phones, and everything. I'm like, "Put it in your safe. Put it in your vault, please." They're like, "Okay, we'll take care of you." And I'm so worried that people are going to chase me up the steps that I go and hide in their like dining room. And as a child, one of the like most fun spots to hide is on top of a chair under the table. So I'm laying on the chairs and I'm like sleeping, trying to catch my breath. And eventually no one came in. I got, you know, I just went to sleep and got a room. But the next day, this all ends in a rim job, right? So the next day, I wake up and I'm like, all right, I should go to the hospital. So I go to the hospital. I'm on crutches, and as I get to the hospital, I'm looking for an English-speaking doctor. And this hospital is just rusted everywhere. The floor is just water everywhere. Plants are coming in through the window, and there's just so many people waiting for help. I'm like, all right, where is the English-speaking doctor? So I'm like crushing through all this like disgusting flooring, and this is the worst hospital I've ever seen. And I see these nurses and they're just like gossiping at each other and like yapping. I'm like, hey, like English doctor, and they're like, what? And they're like, what? And then all of a sudden, my body just like comes over intense pain, and I have food poisoning out of nowhere, and my body's just sweating bricks, and I feel like I'm gonna die. I'm like, all right, where's the bathroom? And those ladies are just like, pointing in a random direction. So like I walk off in the direction. No one is in this hallway of one. It's just giant corridor. No one is in this corridor. And it's dark. All the windows are shattered. Looking for the bathroom. And I see this light coming out of this room. So I go into this room, and it's this just flooded room with urinals. And at the back, there's a random door. And I walk to it, and it looks like a closet. And this door is like shattered as well. Like it looks like someone punched a bunch of holes through it, like in The Shining where he takes the axe to it. It's kind of what it looked like. I open it up, there's a toilet in there, and the floor is flooded in there as well. Like I was trying to go to work actually, so I had one work shoe on and one foot just like out in the open. And I looked down, and this toilet seat, there was no toilet seat. It's just the rim. So I had to sit on the rim, and that's my rim job, my first rim job.
Oh,
So I sit on that toilet and I'm like blowing my brains out. And I look over and I realize that there's no toilet paper. So I'm like, what do I do? Well, I have a sock. So I use my sock and I toss it in the back of the toilet because, screw them. And this is why I carry baby wipes with me everywhere.
Dude,
So
yeah.
that's why I don't like Vietnam, because the food is low quality, pollution. My nostrils get blacked out and soot, and then rim jobs on toilets.
That's why you don't like Vietnam.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like
Well,
you just can't get protein anywhere. It's just like so hard to get a lot of protein.
well, I mean, I think that's a pretty interesting transition. We could talk about fitness now. So
Yeah.
after getting chased on motorcycles, breaking your foot, getting a rim job after getting food poisoning in this decrepit hospital. No, yeah. So back around to fitness. I think that's a pretty great transition. But no, man. So like obviously you have a background in fitness. It's been something that's been kind of persistent in your life, but not ever really being this like massive entity that you have to focus on exclusively. But there have been a couple of times in your life where you've really decided to kind of like turn it up with fitness. Do you want to kind of explain like what your relationship with like normal training has been? So like resistance training, weightlifting, what that's been like throughout the years. I know that you had a stint where you were kind of like into powerlifting and all those things. Then you want to talk about kind of where you went with like the self-experimentation and like some of the weird, unique things that you did. What was that? 5 years ago or so, after you had your Goggins revelation? Was that around that time?
That was maybe 2021.
Oh
My
shit.
last race was 2021 in April.
Was it that recent? Oh shit.
I think.
For some reason I felt
I
like
think it was April 2021. Yeah. It was
okay.
April
Okay, but
2021.
yeah, so I'll let you fill in the details in the timeline, obviously, but like let's just go like high level, talk about like what you have been doing with fitness, with training, for the last however many years, decade. Because I definitely want you to talk about a lot of like the balancing of like your more extreme measures with some of the times that you've been able to pull back and focus on life, focus on like your career and things like that, obviously traveling. But yeah, if you want to talk about that stuff, that would be, I think, a really good way to continue this.
Yeah, so I guess maybe just from the beginning, I just always focus on trying to get big, trying to get stronger. This is like generally the trend with people that are either just getting into fitness or are youthful, you know, when you're not getting injured as much. So when I was 18, I benched 365 for my max. The funny thing is I've never squatted 315. So I squatted 305 one time. You know that tall, really tall black guy that used to go to the gym and he always walks super slow, but
Yeah.
somehow like walks kind of fast at the same time. Like, so he was spotting me and he's like, damn, like you could do so much more. I was like, probably fuck, damn it. But like I've always just never like try to get strong in like my upper body. And then when I was younger. So I do legs more than I do any other muscle group because I do a lot of cardio as well. But my legs are certainly like the weakest component of my body, probably. Besides endurance, like endurance, I'm pretty good. But you know, I guess after college, just a lot of travel. I just try to be efficient with my workouts, whether that's hitting full body workouts or right now, I always my I group legs and shoulders together always. Now, like people always think that's like a weird combination, but I think it's actually very efficient because a lot of the compound movements, and I call them hipster workouts, because I don't want to call them like CrossFit because I don't want to be associated in that manner either. So I just call them hipster workouts, kind of like making fun of myself, but I think they're actually valid. Or like functional workouts, maybe the word, but it's like you know like Romanian deadlifts to snatches or like some kind of like those you know Bill Maeda on Instagram he does these like they call it orbital lunges where you do a lunge and like you're spinning a thing around your head at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's just very efficient when you're traveling a lot and I like the knockout workouts where I don't have to worry about hitting the workout the next day if I don't have to. I do try and work out almost every day when I'm on the move regardless, but I don't stress when I don't work out because I know that you know I'm compensating from a previous workout or I will compensate when I get to a gym. So right now I just focus on being extremely efficient with my workouts, and I also balance that with let's say like not over indulging on food. Even when I do indulge, it's I do fast quite a bit. So whenever I haven't had food on a plane in probably a year, and I've been flying a lot. So I remember this Gordon Ramsay quote. He's like, "I don't ever eat on planes." He's like, "People aren't supposed to eat on planes." And I have no idea if this is like has any validity, but I realized like the food on planes just sucks usually, and it just makes me feel like crap because I'm a very OCD person when it comes to like cleanliness and space, and I just hate having clutter in front of me, and like I don't want my food next to my pillow, and that like you know like just gets to my mind for some reason. So I just decided to stop eating. And also like one thing is like the food you eat after you don't eat for 30 hours from a long plane flight is the best food in the world.
Yeah.
So I've strategically staged the best meals of my life by knowing the best meal of my life is in Tokyo, Shinjuku Station, the biggest station in the world, train station. About 8 minutes walk north of the station is the best ramen I've ever had in my life. And it's like the flavors, you can't imagine what it tastes. It's just this crazy flavor that you don't even realize can exist. But this is my favorite meal. And what I did is after Japan finally opened up after COVID, I flew over and I didn't eat for like 36 hours. And that was the first bite I had. So basically this is also a fun little trick you could do. If you don't eat for like 30 hours and you pick your favorite food, it'll be even better. um, but like I try and like you know be efficient with fasting and just like maxing out things that I know are probably supposed to be good for you. And without these things don't take time. Like a cold shower does not take time. Fasting doesn't take time. It saves you more time. So things that can give me time back are things I really prioritize, whether it's like, you know, again, fasting or and well, I mean, taking a cold shower doesn't give you time back, but things that don't take time that really help your health, I try and, you know, take those seriously. So right now, again, like I'm just focusing on efficiency with my workouts, but I have signed up for a marathon in February and I haven't run in like 2 years.
Yeah.
So I literally just I ran like almost every day for 2 years straight when I was doing ultra marathons, and then I just cut it cold turkey after my last race. But I do want to get back into it because I think that running is actually it's also really boring, but it's like one of the toughest things you can do because when you're, let's say, maxing out on bench, you have a limit to how many reps you can do of like 315. You cannot do another rep after like whatever your max is, like 10 reps or something. But with running, you can always take one more step. No one has ever quit running due to them not being able to take one more step. They always just quit. So I'm like, all right, this is like a really interesting thing because everyone knew me from college as the guy that would never do cardio. I would never do cardio. I hated it so much. So I was like, this is like a worthy challenge for myself. I should try it out and experiment and see how it goes. And I just got addicted for 2 years. And the plan is to get back in. And that I've already signed myself up. But again, like it's just like a priority thing. Like, if I don't prioritize it over, whether it's like my career or traveling, running is like a full-time job. So I would wake up, go run for 6 hours, and then just work on my diet and eat and just crush all this food after. And I know some people can do it. It's just not something that I prioritize currently. And I would rather just show up for a bigger challenge as well, than to potentially sacrifice other things that I'm prioritizing right now, whether it's like travel, spending time with friends, just having the time to enjoy other things in life.
What was the actual switch? Like what really caused that transition from where you were really focusing on, like you said, lifting, resistance training, weightlifting, like trying to get big, trying to get jacked, trying to get strong, and then you're like, fuck cardio, I'm never doing that shit. And then all of a sudden one day you're like, I'm gonna do an ultra marathon. Like that doesn't just happen. So like, was there actually something that that motivated you to do that? Something where you're like, holy shit, like I just had this realization. Maybe, maybe it was you running from motorcycles where you're like, holy fuck, maybe I should do something.
So I do have this new belief that like anyone I date, I tell them you have to be able to run 1 mile in case you have to run away from something. It's like I like adamantly believe this. You have to be able to run for like 10 minutes. If you need to escape from, I don't know, like a volcano, or you need to escape from some thugs chasing you, or you just need to run away somewhere. Yeah. Or like, let's say you're taking care of a baby and the stroller like starts rolling down a hill. You need to be able to run after the stroller, right? There's like a viral video going on now where this lady, like, there's a stroller falling into, or like rolling down into a street, and this lady's trying to get it. She just falls over because she's like, I don't know, just whatever. But to me, like, you have to be able to run 1 mile so you can handle situations that demand you be able to run. But to me, I think where the flip kind of happened, I was probably actually at my fattest. So this was like, I was like 205. I was also probably at my strongest as well, or like recent strongest. I was 205, and I've like never really been over 190. And like I normally like sit around 183. But when I was 205, my friend was telling me this story. So my friend is the most extreme person I know. His name's Kaitor. He's a news anchor. He just got a job in Cleveland as the news anchor for their main station. But he's always got these crazy ideas, and he always wants to push the limits and do these things that are very challenging. For example, he went to the hospital once, and they were like shoving this tube. There's this procedure where he needs to have a tube shoved all the way down his throat, all the way down to his stomach or whatever. And he said that when he went there, the anesthesiologist wasn't there to like put him to sleep, and he had to get to work. He's like, I don't have time for this. He's like, just do it. I'm going to stay awake. They're like, no one has ever done this. He's like, I'm going to do it. So they just shove this thing down. And like, he gets through it. But he's always about these challenges and like doing things that you don't think you could actually do. So I became obsessed with that idea where it's like, all right, like someone challenged me, you know what? Like, I'll do that. So whether it's anything, whether it's like skydiving or whether it's like jumping off a cliff and like, I mean, people do all these things all the time, but like, I'm not immune to the normal fears. Like I have I have all the normal fears, but I like the idea of overcoming these fears and not hesitate. So I have this fun little test I always tell people that is like my favorite one, where to see like your ability to overcome a fear without hesitating. And it's in rock climbing. So what you do is you attach yourself into the auto belay rope that catches you if you fall. But the thing is, this rope doesn't catch you until you fall to like 2 or 3 feet. So you've never felt the comfort of it catching you unless you've done it before. So my challenge is usually you go, and if you have never rock climbed in your life, you go and you climb up a super easy route. You get up like 20, 30 feet in the air and you jump off without ever having experienced that feeling of being saved by the rope. You are inherently fearful. So I've taken 2 people to do this, and they just shake up there and quiver, and they're like, oh, like they can't get down. They're like, ah. I'm like, this is why it's my favorite challenge because it's so easy. You just drive to any rock climbing gym, you just go, and like 20 minutes later, they're quaking in their shoes, trying to get down. But to some people, like it seems so easy, but without like actually, experiencing it, it's kind of like you need to experience. So anytime I do something that I know I'm gonna either be scared of or hate, I just think about it and I just never hesitate to go through with it. Whether it's like a cold shower kind of a thing. So everyone's like, oh, like you cold, hot. And it's just like so annoying. But to me, when I was first getting into cold showers, I hated it so much. I would just in my head, I was like, all right, it's a cold shower day, max cold. And even though I know it's coming and I want to get out, I just don't move. And then it comes like, this sounds so obvious, right? But to me, it's like the focus on not hesitating is really important. So I remember I was doing a jump in Switzerland off of a cliff with like a rope swing from a very high cliff. And the guy I was with was like at first he was like quaking in his shoes. And then he managed to do it. And my goal was that no matter how scared I was, and it was, I was certainly plenty scared, that I would have a smooth walk right off that edge. My walk would just be nothing. And the same thing with skydiving, just nothing. So for me, it's like a lot of just facing these challenges and having the mental ability to do it in a swift motion.
Yeah.
And again, this is just like my challenge to myself. And I've kind of gotten used to it. Even with like, this even applies to scary movies. I remember one time, the way I got over being scared of the dark was I was in my basement. And like as a kid, you're in the basement, it's dark, and like you try and sprint upstairs because sometimes you have to turn the light off from downstairs. And like you feel something behind your neck, and like something's gonna come and kill you if you don't run up the stairs. So this was that feeling I would get in the basement. And one day out of nowhere, I was like, God, like why am I always so scared? And I just shot the light and I didn't move. And 5 seconds later, when nothing was killing me, I was like, okay, like, and I was still scared, but obviously nothing is gonna kill me down there. And then like a minute later, nothing happened. I was like, all right, this is no longer scary. So I just like forced myself into this confrontation with fear, and I just squashed it. Like my best friend, like I was telling his Kaitor, he said, anytime I feel fear, I have to squash it right away. Like let's say college days and someone needs to present, like who wants to present first? You feel the fear of like, oh, like I don't want to go first. You immediately put your hand up. And that's like the way to kind of just squash your fear for the rest of your life. I remember I was like scared watching a movie, and the way I got over it was instead of looking away or covering my eyes, I put my face right on the screen and just stared at the whatever the monster was in the movie, and I just got over my fear like that way. So yeah, I don't know, I kind of sidetracked, but basically like, how did I flip this switch to get into running? Well, my friend, again, he was telling me these stories of like all these wild things he likes to do. And he's telling me this story about this guy who ran around a single track for 100 miles. And at like mile 70, he was pissing blood and his legs were broken and his feet were broken. And at mile 80, he's just like waddling. And his wife at that time says, you're not going to make it. And right when he says, you're not going to make it, he sprints the last 20 miles with his whole body broken. And I was like, wow, that's like such a fascinating story. And then that same week, by coincidence, this podcast comes out with Joe Rogan and Goggins.
Oh yeah.
And I'm listening to it, and I'm like, wait, this is that guy that my friend told me about. What the heck? And I listened to this story and like all these like amazing feats of just basically overcoming the worst genetics and like the worst luck and having a broken body and still doing these crazy feats of strength. I was like, I'm a bum. Like I'm getting fat. What the hell? So I go outside and it's snowing, and I take off my shirt and I run for the first time in like 15 years. And from that day, I didn't stop running for 2 years straight, pretty much. And I did my first race was a half marathon, and then I went straight to an ultra marathon, 31 miles, because I thought it would be cool to skip a marathon, right? And then my next race was a 64-mile race, which I didn't complete. I got to mile 50. And then the race after that was a 100-mile race, which I didn't complete. I got to mile 60. So that was like my time of running, basically just every single day, run, and just eat. Yeah, so that was that.
Well, yeah, I mean, so with all of that, it's a lot, obviously, but I agree with like the whole do hard stuff, right? Like I like that mentality. I know that, fuck, I can't remember the book. I've literally tried to think about what the book name is the entire time that you were saying that stuff. I can't think of it off the top of my head. There is a book that that is talking a lot about those things, like about how, you know, humans were meant to do hard things, to challenge ourselves, to push through the potential failures, to get to the points of like feeling that exorbitant success, right? Like where you overcome something very difficult, whether that's something like, you know, relatively simple, like doing a cold plunge or like a cold shower, or whether it's doing something incredibly hard, like a 100-mile race. Like those are obviously vastly different in scale, but there's something that is like inherent to being a human of like overcoming hard things and doing those hard things and subjecting yourself to those hard things. And I definitely like that mentality. There's, like I said, scales though, right? Like most people aren't just going to go from, all right, I'm training, I'm in the gym, I'm lifting hard, I'm doing hard things, to I'm going to do 100-fucking-mile race to the desert. Like that is ridiculous stuff. And you mentioned that, you know, did you read Goggins' book, or did you just listen to
I listened to the audiobook.
Yeah, I listened to the audiobook. So like the Goggins book is actually like pretty fucking wild. Like if you hear that story, and I don't know how many people who are listening have actually like read Goggins' book or like know that story, but pretty much like the most motivational dude you could ever imagine. Like he's pretty much just the epitome of like nut up or shut up. Like he doesn't give a fuck about any excuses. Like he's very much like, if you want something, like you're able to go do it. Like you are your only enemy, right? Like you're the only thing holding you back. And again, like I do really appreciate and like that mentality. But there is a point, right? Like there's a point where like you can't continue to push yourself. And if you do, like you might be getting into the realms of like, this is unhealthy or unsafe. At what point for you were you like, okay, maybe I should just like not continue doing this? Or did you ever feel like, all right, if I keep doing these crazy ultra marathons, like I'm going to potentially like fuck myself up? Because that point,
Yeah, these were thoughts.
isn't healthy. Like that's not healthy.
So I don't ever think I actually reached my limits. So the first time I ever learned that ultra marathons were a thing was in Switzerland in 2015 or so. And I'm on this train, and I'm sitting next to this girl, and this girl looks like she's like the Michelin man, like with the, you know, puffy look. And she's not fat. She's just wearing 4 layers of clothing.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Why are you wearing so much clothes?" She's like, "Oh, like I didn't want to check a bag." And I was like, "Oh, so what are you doing?" She's like, "Oh, there's like a race in these mountains, and this is Zermatt, and this is actually probably the most famous or most coveted race in the world for ultras. It's in the Swiss Alps. It's just beautiful. It's called the UTMB, something Mont Blanc or something, and everyone tries to get into it. And she is racing it. I'm like, "Oh, like what's this race?" She's like, "Oh, like it's the ultra marathon." I was like, "What's an ultra marathon?" She's like, "Anything over a marathon." So like we're talking, I'm like fascinated. She's telling me this story and about like how she was, you know, running all these miles. And I asked her, "What is the furthest you have ever run where you thought you were going to die? And then at what mile did you run beyond that? And how many miles did you run further?" And she said she ran 140 miles and she thought she couldn't take a single additional step. And she was literally going to die. And she ran 40 more miles. I was like, "Holy shit, I'm a bum. Like, what the heck? I can't even run 30 seconds without losing my breath." So, so I do agree there is always a limit. The question is like, you probably have no idea what your limit actually is the idea. So when I got to mile 50 in my second ultra, and like I was so underprepared for these ultras because I was just running on treadmills. So like I would run marathons on treadmills, literally just watching Westworld on an iPad 4 or 5 hours straight on a treadmill. And that was my train, just flat, smooth coasting. And then I get to this race and it looks like fucking like climbing to Mordor with all these rocks everywhere. And I'm like, I can't run. I'm literally just like trying to like not fall on these rocks. And that's for 20 hours straight. I was like, I fucking hate this shit. This is so annoying. But that was my second race, and I got to mile 50, and like my right leg was just destroyed, and I feel like I couldn't walk further. But again, it's like, wait, if these people are getting 140 miles and they can go another 40 miles, and maybe I could have gone further. I know my last race, the 100 miler where I got to 60, I know I could have kept going. I was totally fine. And I actually went into that race injured, but the injury never flared up during the race. I was just so tired, and I only slept 3 hours before this race, and I was just like, I just pretty much quit. But yeah, I agree there is probably a limit, but that most people definitely quit way before their limits. And when you're in pain, you could probably still go like 3x more. So yeah, I agree. I just think that there's a lot more to people's limits.
What was the actual most difficult thing about the ultras? Was it the terrain?
I mean, the races themselves, the terrain. Like, I think if it's a flat race, I can go forever.
Yeah.
But I'm I'm probably the slowest person in every race. Literally, like I was literally the slowest person in every single race, but I managed to stay the last person and not drop out the longest as well. So like everyone would be like, "You're the last, but you're still not dropping out." Like all these people ahead of me are dropping out. So that was kind of fun, and like chasing people down is really fun because like I'm like, I was still lifting
Yeah.
3 4 days a week and staying pretty jacked for these races and like heavy. And I would catch up to these like slim dudes that are like just like goats in the mountains. And I was like, oh, like I'm catching up to people. I'm just like power walking them down at times, like because these hikes are straight up hills. What was the question again? Totally forgot.
Yeah, the most difficult part of the ultras.
Oh, yeah. So for the actual race days, they would be the terrains, because I just didn't train on these terrains, and I also hate spending time going to different types of trails and like training on these terrains. It's just so time consuming. So that's why I always just did the Stairmaster and like the Octane ellipticals
Yeah.
and treadmills. But the most difficult thing about ultra running is just time consumption. So
Yeah.
there's someone that's running right now. She's been running a 50K, which is probably I think 31, 32 miles every single day for the past 192 days, and she's still going. She has not quit this for 200 days, and I believe she just wants to hit 200. She's the race organizer. Her name's like Candice Burke or something, and she organizes the Tahoe 240-mile race, or it might be Tahoe 240, Tahoe 200, and there's a Moab 240, and these are like two of the longest races in the USA, and these are like the ones that Goggins has done as
Yeah.
well. But her life is like all running right now. She says, she writes it, she's like, I've been running every single day for like 6 hours every single day, and I've just lost my life. Like she doesn't know what the real world looks like right now, is basically what she's writing. She just runs, like sees her family and sleeps pretty much. And so it's just time consumption. It's just so time consuming. Like, yeah, that's the worst part. It's a full-time job.
Yeah, no, and there have been a couple of instances over the past few years where something like that has happened, or someone has broken some kind of record. Like I know that the marathon record for men got broken relatively recently. Someone broke 2 hours, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Eliud Kipchoge's, I think he's like Kenyan or something. He broke the 2 hour mark in a very like formatted race. So like they conditioned this race to be perfect for him, but he still broke it.
Yeah, so things like that. I know that a few years ago, someone did an Ironman in every state in 50 days.
Yeah, I saw that. It was like a Netflix thing.
But it's like it's shit like that's actually like pushing what the limits of like a human body can do. And like this woman who's running 50K in what, like you said, every single day for 200 days, like Like that's incomprehensible to me. Like absolutely fucking
Right.
incomprehensible, right? And like I don't even know if there is an equivalent for like weightlifting or anything that would be more familiar to me, but I can't think of it, right? Like the only thing I can think of that would be in any way similar would to be like go in and do something like 10 by 10 squats every single day. And obviously that's not in any way the same because the
But
time.
you did the month of deadlifting.
No, that's not even close. Not even close. Like it's really not because like I can scale back on intensity, right? Like I can change
True.
for 50 kilometers running every single day for 200 days. It's the monotony. I feel like it's the
It's so
monotony.
boring.
Like you said,
Yeah.
it's like your entire life, your entire reality warps around
There's a lot of podcasts and movies and shows.
that. Yeah, that's fucking absurd. But like she's not doing that in any structured way. Like that's just more recreational. She's just doing that to do it essentially, right?
Yep. Just to
Okay.
challenge yourself.
I do have a question though about like the ultra stuff. So first of all, like what would be a good, I don't know, good like a good pace for like 100 miles because these aren't they're not a set length, right? You mentioned 100 mile
Yeah,
race.
you'll be like running and hiking. Like you hike uphill.
Yeah.
You do not run uphill unless you're like crazy, I guess.
But like
Which I mean, I think most people are already.
like a per mile pace, right? So like some of like let's say like
It would probably be like 13 or something. Like
13.
people can do it depends on the terrain. If you're like running on a flat track, this is much different. Like people I think people have done like 5 to 6, maybe like a 6 minute pace for 100 miles.
Holy
Um,
shit.
it might even be 5. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. I know one of the best. These I think he's the single best ultra runner in the world. His name's Killian Jornet. I think he does a lot of trail races at like 6 minute paces sometimes. And I might be wrong. I would have to check. But he is like by far the best trail ultra runner in the world. And it's like there's such a gap between him and others. It's kind of crazy because there is this race that our mutual friend Heather, she did in Colorado. I don't know if she did the actual race or she just did the course on her own with friends. It's called the Hard Rock 100, which is in Silverton, Colorado. And it's one of the single hardest ultras in the world at 100 miles because the terrain, it's like 40,000 feet of climbing or something. And to put that into perspective, my last 100 miler was 10,000 feet maybe of climbing. And that was a lot. So this is 40,000 feet on shitty terrain, like rocks that are jagged. It's so annoying. This guy, he gets first place, but in like the first few hours of the race, he falls and dislocates his shoulder. So he's running with a shoulder up in a sling for the next however many 15, I don't know, 20 some hours probably, and he comes in first place, and by a long shot. So the second place guy comes in, he sits down and he's getting interviewed. And there's this video on YouTube, it's kind of funny. And everyone's like asking questions about it. And then Killian, the first place guy, comes over with his broken arm and his sling. He's like, oh, good job. Like, try to be genuine, but the second place guy was like, this fucking guy, like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
No, and that's part of my thing with ultras is I can't even comprehend it, right? Like I can comprehend a marathon. I think it's mostly because like it's so much more common and I can conceptualize the idea of doing something for 2 to 3 hours, right? Like I can't do a marathon in 2 to 3 hours, but like I can conceptualize people doing continuous hard activity for 2 to 3 hours. Doing that for a day straight is like that boggles my fucking mind.
Yeah.
Like I can't wrap my head around how someone can actually do that. And like what you said, the elevation, the terrain, like none of it makes any sense to me. Like none of it does. It should not be humanly possible to do that. But another question I do have though is like do you sleep on some of these long races? Like how do you
I never did.
yeah.
But people do, like they'll nap for like 2 or 3 minutes just to like read. It's like you just need to like fall asleep just to wake up.
Oh, so it's just 2 to 3 minutes. So they're just like
No, yeah, people are sleeping like for hours. Like I know, let's say like someone like Goggins, he did the 240-mile race, and it took him maybe like 60 to 70 hours, and he didn't sleep a second on that run. So he was like 3 days in, and he's just like half dead. I don't know after 70 hours. I think he did it at a 17-minute pace for 200. 40 miles,
Yeah.
which is like really, yeah.
See, that's like the equivalent of telling me like how many light years away some like neighboring galaxy is. Like I can hear numbers, but like it's just not making any sense to me. Like none of it is registering because I can't comprehend doing something like that. But no, I mean, I am super fucking fascinated with ultra stuff. I think that I could probably ask you questions about that forever. But I do want to also talk about some of the other stuff that you've done. So obviously we talked a little bit about fasting. I don't know how extensively you've done fasting or like the depth of it, but has it always been?
I'm not like very strict about it. Like I'll try to fat, like I haven't eaten at 4:30 p.m. and I ate my last meal at like 8 or 9. But that's because I just had calls from 8 a.m. to the time our podcast was, and I was like, oh, I just haven't had time to eat. And I've been like traveling a lot, so I'm not eating as healthily as I normally would. And like I'm not like super healthy, but I try and get a certain amount of protein in, and I just eyeball it, and I try to get like fruits and veggies, and I don't really think beyond that. So yeah, like I probably work out and I haven't eaten 20 hours or so.
But
and then
yeah,
I'll smash a ton of food after that.
but with the fasting, you're not doing it in like any super structured way, right? Like, yeah, okay.
Zero structure, because to me it's not worth the bandwidth and the thought, and like the likelihood that I stick to it is very low, and I don't take it that seriously. I take my health seriously, but I'm okay with breaking these habits as long as I get back. It's like I'm okay with losing some sleep as long as I make sure, like normally I will be getting sleep when I'm at home and in my own bedroom.
Yeah, no. So the best way I can encapsulate that is very similar actually to how I view fasting, because I intermittently fast most days, but it's to make your life a little bit easier rather than trying to like optimize something. So you're like opening up more time in your day to get more shit done.
It saves so much time.
Yeah.
Like I wake up, no food necessary. Then you don't have to digest. You don't have to digest to go to the gym. It just is so much time freed up when you fast.
And that's usually what I do as well. Like usually on days that I train, I will not eat up until like my pre-workout meal, and that will usually be like between 11 and 1 or something like that. But then on days that I am resting, so typically will be like Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, I usually will either not eat at all, or I'll just have like one meal late in the afternoon, like whenever Lex is home and we're just chilling or something like that. But a big reason for that is because I've found that whenever I eat, especially like any kind of like carb heavy meal, I just get drowsy as fuck and I get groggy. Like I don't know exactly like why that is for me specifically, and I don't feel like it's always been like that. But if I eat any kind of meal with carbs, I'm immediately sleepy and I'm immediately like
happens to me.
I don't want to
work. To me.
I can't work. So I'm just like brain foggy. Like I can typically have like protein shakes or like something that's protein and fat heavy, but nothing in terms of like carbs, definitely not any kind of like starchy carbs. But no, cool. So we can definitely move on from the fasting stuff. But what was the full body everyday training that you used to do?
Oh yeah, so this is when I'm still traveling. Let me screen share this.
Is it actually going to load?
Oh, the screen share load. This is something that I already have set up. Travel history. Let me screen share.
And whenever you screen share, you're definitely also going to have to explain what's on the screen.
Oh yeah, don't worry, that'll be simple here. Ooh, more share screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay, never mind, not screen sharing.
All right, let's just walk through it. That like every screen share attempt has been just an abject failure.
Yeah, so basically, I was traveling in Asia for like 3 months or so. Like just a few months ago, I was in Taiwan for a company retreat for a few weeks, and then Japan, and then back to Taiwan. And I thought, like, I want to see what my body can feel like if I do full body every single day with no days off. But when I do take a day off, it doesn't matter because I've loaded so many full body days that it's just like, like normal taking days off. So I did this, and I did this for about a month straight. And what was interesting, I felt very well rounded. Instead of like a certain body part feeling sore one day, my whole body felt sore every single day. And I like feeling sore because it feels like I've done something. I know like there's some information out there. Maybe that's like not the case, but to me, it felt like as long as I was smashing protein, and I was, because there are all these buffets in Taiwan, and like one was called Momo's Paradise. It's like unlimited beef and soup. It was delicious, but so I was getting sufficient protein, but I wasn't getting sufficient sleep. So I think full body every single day can actually work, but you need to get your 7 minimum hours of sleep every single night. Once that starts slipping, just goes out the window. So I was like sleeping 3 to 5 hours because it's just like new environments and like the bed's not comfortable. I don't like the pillow. I don't know.
Yeah.
So again, like I don't think it's very ideal because there are too many variables that can go wrong. But in a closed environment, I think it's actually quite ideal that someone could pull it off as long as they're sleeping and getting the nutrition. Um, but it was definitely difficult. And at first, like my body was getting used to it, but then started to feel pretty good actually. So um, I, I think, if someone wants to try it out, it could be pretty interesting.
That's actually really similar to my little experiment that I did a few years ago with deadlifting every day that you mentioned a second ago. At the very beginning, it was like, it crushed me. I could not recover. I was so fucking sore. I started getting like all of these like nervous system complications. Like I felt like I was getting sick every other day. Like I was just all shut down. And I actually was getting like long sessions of tattoos done in the middle of that too, which definitely didn't help the nervous system stuff. But what I felt was after I got through like the midpoint of the month, it just felt fine. I was good.
Mm-hmm.
I also felt strong as fuck. And despite the fact that I was deadlifting every single day, my low back, like my hips, everything felt so resilient. Like it was crazy. I was like, I can go in there and just deadlift 500 pounds without warming up, and my low back would be fine. Like
Yeah.
today, if I tried to do that, I would explode. I would break in half.
Yeah,
But
because I feel like the body is like meant to be able to acclimate to like something that's daily. Because I
yeah.
always like I use like caveman analogies. Basically, like if a caveman was doing something every single day, then in theory we should be able to do this.
Well, so I 100% agree with you. Like our bodies are so pliable and plastic and will adapt to pretty much anything that you throw at it. It's more of a question of like, is this actually useful to adapt to though, right? So like for me, deadlifting every single day, doing a weird variation, doing 500 pounds, multiple reps, multiple sets every single day, that's probably not really useful for like the goal that I was trying to achieve back then. For you, training full body every day, it's still probably not useful for the goal that you're trying to achieve now, because it'd be more beneficial for you to just do full body like 3 times a week and just like maintain your muscularity, maybe train a little bit harder,
Right.
like condense
Yeah.
your training. But it is cool sometimes to like run these weird experiments where you just try and see what your body can adapt to and see like where you can push those limits. That's something I found very fun for me. It breaks the monotony of like going to the gym and doing the same workout over and over and over every single year, like just always trying to like slowly improve incrementally, like 1 percentage point at a time on, fucking bench press. But every once in a while, like trying to shake things up. Like there was a period, I think it was last year, where I did like a month or maybe even longer of like only unilateral training. Like I only did unilateral training. Um, and my body felt so much better, like felt so much better. I definitely was able to correct some asymmetries that I had. And in general, like it felt more natural in a lot of ways than like doing bilateral variations and like the counterparts to those unilateral work. But yeah, I mean, anyway, like I would agree with you that like our bodies can adapt to pretty much anything. Like any real stimulus, short of like something that is catastrophic, that's gonna like absolutely fucking kill us. Like the hormetic effect is way stronger than I think that most people understand, which is again one of the reasons why like vaccines, or it is the reason why vaccines work, right? It's also the reason why we can grow and get big strong muscles, because like this lower level of adaptable stress repeatedly applied over time, eventually our bodies just create mechanisms to immunize ourselves against those things, right? So like we grow muscles, we develop antibodies, like all of that. So no, man, I definitely think that's interesting. Is there anything else that you've done in terms of like self experiments that have been a little bit different?
Um, Probably that's about it. Like,
Yeah.
like focusing on the like that new like health stuff where it's fasting and the cold plunges. This is all like what the past year of hype that people are getting to this. Um, Full body every day, ultra running, and definitely getting back into running right right now as well. But probably about it as far as fitness goes.
Well, let's pivot from fitness then, because before we wrap up, I definitely just want to like nerd out for a second. We can talk about like what you're currently doing, and
Right.
and we can just have like a brief conversation about crypto world, like potentially even for people who have absolutely no fucking idea like what crypto is, or like what the reason for something like cryptocurrency would be, or people have no clue what a blockchain is, or like people don't know what a Bitcoin or an Ethereum is. So like, do you want to just briefly talk about like what you currently do, like your role with Osmosis, the company that you're working with now? And if we need to, we can kind of like go real high level on like crypto in general. Like it's going to have to be super high level because we don't have a fucking decade to talk about everything. But
Right.
you want to just talk about that stuff real quick?
Yeah, so at Osmosis, I guess internally I would be the chief of staff, but externally I'm essentially like head of growth and strategy, or like if you want to call it chief strategy officer or something. Essentially, just leading the growth of our team with the co-founders and making sure that we have the bandwidth to grow and that our product gets adopted. And I guess what is our product? Essentially, well, sometimes we try to be vague, like if we're talking to people that aren't crypto native, because it's a little weird. People are like, oh, like what do you do? And the generic answer I gave people was like, oh, like, it's a financial privacy technology, which
Yeah.
is like technically true, but not in the sense you're thinking. Like when you're thinking of financial privacy, you're thinking like, oh, no one knows I'm doing these transactions. No one, like the government can't find me.
Yeah.
I don't want some girl to know I'm paying for my second girlfriend over in China or something. This isn't me. I'm just saying like, this is like what people think of financial privacy. But for us, it's like more that people that would take advantage of knowing what your transaction is ahead of time, they don't get to take advantage of that knowledge. It's kind of like in Wall Street, where your data is generally sold, and this data basically allows people that are paying for it to take advantage of that data. It's kind of like front running your money. By your money, this is the bulk of like all mega millions of dollars of retail customers. So this is like what we kind of tell people that aren't crypto native. But people that are crypto native, Osmosis is essentially it's this DeFi hub, decentralized financial hub, where all sorts of financial products can come in and use this blockchain, or essentially a platform, to launch their products. So whether it's like a trading platform, whether it's leverage, whether it's perpetuals, whether it's lending and collateral and borrowing, whether it's NFTs or whether it's video gaming, these are all things that are either existing, being built, launching soon, or coming in the near future on Osmosis. And the vision for Osmosis at like the root level is essentially that you will be able to you will be able to have liquidity or swap anything from anywhere to anywhere. So if we were to think of this in the real world, you would think of like, how do I, let's say there's like all this gold in Ghana or something, and you want gold in Alaska for some reason. How do you get gold to Alaska? Basically, this platform allows this to happen seamlessly without you ever having to deal with all the bullshit. Like imagine trying to send money to Venezuela with Western Union. They take 70% of your money, and you probably have to worry about it getting lost or something. And then you have to worry about like, how long it takes to get there. It might, I don't know, maybe takes 2 weeks or something. This is just tedious bullshit. Why do you have to worry about three separate things that in themselves are each significant? The idea is that everything is going to be seamless. You only have to interface in one way, and it's just one click and you're done. So whether it's, like nowadays you can just order something from Alibaba all the way in China, and this comes to your doorstep in like 3 days, and it's like $2. How does this happen? Because the infrastructure in place for all of this, all of these transactions is already set, so that you have the easiest and most beautiful time of your life ordering this $2 card from China, but someone built it all out, and it's there, and it exists because of all this effort being put in. So basically, we're building this platform that the goal is to have this seamless infrastructure for anything financial related.
Yeah. And I think that a really good parallel here is you mentioned like Western Union, like potentially like a remittance payment, right? So like someone who is in the US, like sending money back to their home country to like help fund and pay for like their family that is back there, right? And like that is an extortionate business in a lot of ways, because these like Western Union companies like that, they take massive fees. There's a lot of checks and balances. There's a lot of approval systems and qualifications, and they can freeze your money if they decide to. And if you're sending money back to a communist country or a totalitarian country or whatever, like there are a lot of eyes that are looking into like your transactions, into your money. A lot of people that can potentially try and put their hands in that pie or restrict what you're doing. Like financial freedom is not necessarily inherent in every single place in the world, which we live in the US. For us, that's something that we take for granted, because we just assume that, hey, if we send our money to our friend, it's going to get there, and we're not going to have to worry about it. Or we assume that whenever we get paid from our employer, that it's just going to show up in our bank account, and we're not going to have any issues moving that or going to the ATM and getting our money out. But in most countries, maybe not most, but in a lot of countries around the world, that's not the case. And like even a country like Argentina, I was reading an article the other day where people in Argentina choose to be paid in a cryptocurrency, because by the time they get paid their salary, by the time it gets to their bank account, it's already been inflated away, and it's already worth like half. It's worth like half the amount that it was, or that they should have been paid, right? Because that's the inflation rate that Argentina is experiencing, and their conversion rate is so pitiful whenever you're going between dollars and whatever, is it Argentinian peso? Is that what it is? Something like that.
Sure what it is.
Yeah. But anyway, so like that is essentially like the value proposition of something like Osmosis, which is, like you said, it's a decentralized finance hub, but right now it's a decentralized exchange. So a lot of people can think of this like if you have a Robinhood account, or if you have like a brokerage account through let's say like Schwab, or through TD Ameritrade or Fidelity, or any of these like big companies. Essentially, it allows you to go and exchange assets for assets, right? So in the US, we might go and exchange our dollars for gold, or exchange our dollars for shares of Apple, or for government bonds, or something like that. But a large majority of countries in the world, like they're not able to do that as frictionless and as seamless as the US can. But that presents a massive problem for a lot of people, because they're financially excluded from the system, right? And for citizens in China, or for citizens in Russia, like they're not responsible for the crimes of their country, or the crimes of like the leaders in their country. So for someone who is stuck in those countries, or who is potentially living under sanctions, like they're watching their wealth that's being generated throughout their entire lifetime either be confiscated by their country, or being evaporated because their country's home currency is being inflated away, or like in Turkey or Argentina. So there are a lot of places in the world that are suffering from a lot of problems financially, and people don't have the same freedom that we do in the US, which is why cryptocurrency is a thing, right? Like that's why Bitcoin is the thing. A lot of people don't know what Bitcoin is, but Bitcoin is essentially like the OG way to protect yourself against the government meddling with your money, right? Like that's essentially what Bitcoin was created for. It was after like the financial crisis in 2008. People were like, fuck this bullshit. I'm not going to allow like the government to continue bailing out banks and just like inflating away my money. Like that seems ridiculous. So Bitcoin is essentially like digital gold. Like that's the whole premise behind it. Ethereum came along a little bit later. They added a lot of functionality to what a blockchain can do. So now Ethereum is like this like settlement layer, right? So like you can transact on Ethereum. You have like smart contracts, which are basically just these cool little agreements that says like, hey, I'll do this if you do that. And then Osmosis is built on top of Cosmos, which is, we don't need to get into too much detail there, but it's essentially allowing people to come and exchange asset for asset, and not necessarily have to rely on their country or the infrastructure in their country to do that. Because if you have a computer, if you have internet connection, you're basically able to get access to these decentralized financial applications, which is the whole premise behind decentralized finance. It's not governable, right? Like it's not nationalized. It's not one single person or one company that's running it. It's a lot of different hubs. It's a lot of different servers. It's spread out. It's decentralized, right? So do you want to add anything to that, or is there anything that I missed?
No, it's pretty good. I think especially for like this podcast, it's like kind of spot on and a good summary.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Osmosis is really like transitioning towards being like a hub, right? So like in a perfect world, like there would be kind of like the abstraction between, like you mentioned even before, like the real world, right? Like whenever you think of the real world, you think of like transferring gold from Africa to the US or something like that. That's the real world. But ideally, there should be an abstraction between like the digital world and the real world. Like you shouldn't have to think about the digital world as like this
Exactly.
separate,
Yeah.
this
That's the
separate
goal. Is
space.
like we don't want users to necessarily even know they're using
Yeah.
osmosis. The technology is just there. So one of my dreams, and like this isn't far off, and it could happen today if we put the infrastructure in place, where basically someone from the USA can send money to someone in Africa without any registration in one click. Now, how would this happen? Is you would transfer money through like a fiat on ramp provider. Cato is the company's name, and they would interact through osmosis. And then on the other side, they would get out of osmosis through the same type of entity on the other side, maybe in Africa. And this company in Africa deposits it in someone's bank account over there. So like this is all feasible in a single click, but it just needs a lot of coordination between companies and making sure these things are in place. So this is like entirely feasible in the immediate future if it were to be built out. But this is like kind of the thing that I would like to see, just having so much more interoperability between countries without people having to basically deal with something like Western Union.
Yeah. What, like you mentioned before that in Japan they have basically like they can just scan and pay with their card or pay with like their phone, right? The phone is the ideal because you just QR code
Yeah.
something, you pay with it. And in an ideal world, I feel like there should be some kind of like digitally native money, some kind of digitally native way of paying and accounting and keeping track of all of your funds, to where it shouldn't even necessarily have to be going through a Chase or going through like some kind of big bank or someone who can potentially like exert power and control over like your money, right? And
Exactly.
US,
Yeah, that's ideal. You don't want anyone like, why should someone
yeah,
have power over your money,
yeah.
essentially?
And in the US, like we've even seen this more recently with like a lot of these like regional banks failing, where there were even questions at like Silicon Valley Bank where like, do the depositors get their money back? Are they made whole? And what that means essentially is like, if you put money in Silicon Valley as a way to just hold your money there in an account, whenever Silicon Valley went bankrupt and went under, they were actually questioning whether the people who were holding their money in those accounts should get their money back, should have that money protected. Like that's a big fucking problem if you can't even trust the banks that you're putting your money in to be responsible with your money. And newsflash, banks aren't responsible with your money. Like,
Yeah.
like as soon as it goes in, as soon as you put money in, they send it
Right.
out in like 10 different directions, right? Like
Straight YOLO, yeah.
they don't hold your money physically in any
Right.
of those banks. That's not how these things work. So because of that, like in my opinion, I don't think that like the future should have banks. Like I don't think that there needs to be the same concept of physical banks that just hold everyone's money. In my opinion, which is one of the reasons why I began to get so fascinated with like crypto, is like it just seems like it makes so much more sense. Like
They're just an unnecessary middleman. Like,
yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
why are these bums that just take money even existing? And it's just like an old school mentality. Uh, and this would honestly like probably streamline the entire world's economy if these middlemen that are taking so much money weren't doing this.
Do you find that like whenever you tell people that, even if you don't tell people initially, but like, do you feel like it's hard to have the conversation with people and tell them that you work in crypto because crypto has such like a shitty name?
I just don't tell people.
Yeah. Do you?
They're like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, like I work in tech." They're like, "What kind of tech?" I'm like, "Oh, financial tech." And they're like, "Oh, okay, cool." I'm like, "Yeah, just some boring stuff." Like someone came up to me at the airport. It's like, "So what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm a consultant."
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, what kind of company?" I'm just, "Oh, just the finance." I just don't
Why,
tell people anymore.
why do you think that crypto in general has such like a bad name, or like it's so
I think it's just
misunderstood?
the influencers and the like bros, like the hype, like same with like Wall Street bets and like people like it's like GameStop mentality. That's what people see cryptos as because that's like what went viral. Like people, that's all you generally hear about on like TikTok and Instagram. It's just scammers. So like
Yeah.
the real the real information for crypto isn't really on TikTok ever or on Instagram, and it's not influencers. It's generally just like YouTubers that are the decent YouTubers. There's plenty of scammers, and then Twitter content. And you know, your parents aren't on Twitter. Like Twitter is generally like where, in my opinion, is where like the best information is.
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed too is that, like what you mentioned, a lot of the information that you see come out about any kind of like crypto or like blockchain stuff, at least whenever things aren't like insanely inflated and like speculations like massively high and everyone's getting rich, like what was it, 2021, where it was like NFT mania was going crazy and like all that shit. Like whenever things calm back down to earth, everyone is very quick to be like, oh, this is like just bros like gambling their money. It's just people like trying to get rich quick. But I've always found that it's really hard to get through to people and communicate like what the actual purpose of like crypto is, because they're also jaded by hearing like all of the scams, hearing of all the ways that people have lost money, of hearing of all the ways that people have made a fuck ton of money, but they view that as like being lucky or not deserving it, right?
Yeah.
Every like
the
Dogecoin, yeah, like Dogecoin, like people just get rich off of like meme coins, and it's like that kind of undermines a lot of like the real use cases behind what crypto is meant to be or what is created to be. But even something as simple as like the mining issue, right? Like every time you hear about Bitcoin, like you hear about like how Bitcoin is like killing all of the rainforests, or like how every time like someone brings up, especially like there are a lot of congressional hearings about these things, but like every time someone talks about it, they talk about how like crypto is used for like money laundering, and they're used for like paying for drugs, and they're like all these activities. But it's never really like talked about the potential use cases for crypto. And I've always found that to be very interesting. And even like within the US, it's become a very like bipartisan issue where like, oddly enough, Republicans are very like pro crypto, which typically you don't think of like Republicans being like pro technology. And like Democrats have become very anti crypto, which historically you've thought of Dems being more like liberal, open-minded, like pro tech, pro progress. And crypto also has the potential to like somehow equalize the wealth gap too. So like all of these things are beneficial, but I think that you would probably agree that there are a lot of friction points, and it's still like a very nascent technology. It's still super fucking immature, which is why you've seen a lot of people that have potentially like lost a lot of money, or they've been hacked, or you know, they've come in, they've like bought into the excitement, they've like bought NFTs, and then they're like, fuck this is too difficult for me to manage, there's too many things going on at all times. And honestly, like it's kind of hard for me as someone who like, I truly do believe like in the technology. I think that it is something that is incredibly useful for a lot of people. It's often hard to like look through like the scammers and like look through like all of the bad things that have happened, like with Sam Bankman-Fried and like all of this shit, and remember that there are like a lot of potential use cases. Like, is that something that you ever really struggle with? Because I know that you now get paid, like that's how you get like comped, right? Like you get comped a lot through like more like token based incentives, right?
Maybe only like half.
Okay.
The other, it's like we have like a US entity that compensates with like health benefits and insurance and
that makes sense.
Like an actual like company that, but like you know, there are multiple entities in different countries that because we have employees all over the world.
No, that makes total sense. But yeah, dude, is there anything else that you want to add to that? Like just talk about like how that all works, like what the goal is.
I don't know if I would talk about that. I think like if anyone's listening and like, you know, people that have no knowledge of crypto, basically just do your own research. I wouldn't listen to people that have strong opinions. I generally like want, like for myself, I tend to like try and form my own opinions. And people that are way too excited or single-sided, it's generally for some kind of odd reason. And you should at least form your own opinion before accepting more opinions. But I mean, unless you have more questions about crypto, I can get into whatever you want.
I mean, I've already taken up a fuck ton of your time, so I'm gonna like chill out now. But no, man, do you want to like just punctuate this? You want to let people know where they can find you? Let people know where they can find more about Osmosis, what you do.
Yeah, I mean, normally like publicly, like anyone that I know in real life, I don't tell anyone about like what company I actually work for. It's not on my LinkedIn. It's nowhere to be seen. But like Osmosis, you can just see it on Twitter. It's just Osmosis Zone, or you can go to osmosis.zone and check out the website. But like none of my socials have anything about my work life. Like my Instagram is just my name, and there's nothing about my work on there. And there's really nothing about fitness on there either. So if you just want to see travel photos, you can follow me. But as far as work or fitness, there's zero.
That's fair enough. Travel photos are good though.
Yeah.
All right, dude, I'm gonna let you go. I know that you're currently like sitting on a bathroom floor right now. So
yeah, I'm gonna take off my filter.
This background is amazing, but all right, bro. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this though.
Let's see, choose virtual background. I'm in this toilet room.
The reveal. All right, bro.
I had to find a quiet room. All right, see you.